Hello, welcome to another live Google Hangout on the Living Income Guaranteed. And today we will be continuing our series of discussions on sustainability. You can check our previous Hangouts related to this topic. We've talked about thus far consumer responsibility, environmental sustainability. We even had an example of a business that has sustainability as its main principle and foundation. And today we are going to talk about corporate social responsibility, which is the whole sustainable development within corporations themselves as business ethics. So to discuss this, we have today with us Josh Richert from the US. Hello, Josh.
Hello.
Unfortunately, fine, thanks. Well, unfortunately, there's something wrong with his camera, so he won't be showing in terms of having his camera on. So that's a bit unfortunate, and we apologize for that, but technology problems. So to remind everyone watching, there's a Q&A open, meaning questions and comments that you can place throughout the Hangout. We will be discussing for about 40 minutes, so make sure that you place your comment or question right on time. So Josh, let's begin with this point of corporate social responsibility. What is it? How would you define it?
Well, corporate responsibility, as the way I understand it, is more or less a concept of whereby corporations within their business practices take both social and environmental responsibility into consideration. And it is more of a self-regulation aspect as it stands today, where corporations take it upon themselves to regulate themselves in their business practices to be more socially responsible, both within labor practices, or maybe even within wages, how they pay their employees, so on and so forth, and then also environmental practices about how they obtain the resources and whether the resources are coming to the market in ways that are socially responsible and environmentally responsible.
Okay, so essentially this is something that has emerged, of course, as a necessity upon the environmental crisis that we're witnessing, and it has become also like a business marketing, so to speak, an essential aspect required within corporations today with this whole green movement and eco-friendly and environmentally friendly policies that, there's a growing awareness on this, and there's a lot being talked about, the climate change, and there's been protests going on. We've talked about that before as well. There's this book from Naomi Klein also talking about this, like this will change everything. And so talking a lot about the role of corporations in the current environmental problem. So what's your perspective, personally speaking, in terms of corporate social responsibility, or CSR, as we will be referring it for a short term? So has it been effective, or what is the current stance of it?
Well, I think that the idea and the concept of corporate responsibility is a great idea and a great concept, and we definitely do need to be increasing our awareness of how products are coming to market and what the ramifications are of how they're coming to market, and whether it's happening in a way that's best for all and best for the environment. And however, I'm not sure if it's really been that effective overall as to where it stands today in its application, as evidenced by the current state of affairs in the worldwide. I mean, we have things that are kind of easy to see for everybody. We have major pollution issues and environmental issues that result in, as far as like deforestation or overpollution of the oceans or the air, you name it. The pollution's everywhere. So, and then we also have abuses within, how products are brought to market within labor. Take the Chinese labor, for instance, and so you put that together, and it doesn't seem like it's been that effective as the way we've been implementing it so far.
Yes, it's talked about that corporate social responsibility is not so much the idea of charity or the corporation getting too involved with the community, which cool. I mean, there are aspects that are supportive, and the corporation as another member of society, so to speak. But it's not so much about how money is spent after they've gained the profit, but how profits are is created in essence. So that includes obviously the production of the products and the labor conditions, the wages, and all of this, which amounts to several aspects that have become a source of mostly problems and protesting at the moment in terms of social movement, this responsibility coming from corporations. What can you tell us about, for example, corruption and social responsibility on this?
Well, I mean, as far as the results, I mean, it's just really has not been. There's nothing within how we see things today that has really given any credibility to the movement as it stands today. We still have conditions that are not good, not to the best for all, all around us, and what we have, like you mentioned, Marlen, is you have corporations that are catching on to this trend and realize that they do need to, in fact, at least present themselves in a way that they're being socially and environmentally responsible. However, they also have shareholders to answer to. In the end, a corporation is really about making profits, and if those profits are going to be interfered or lessened or threatened by their socially responsible movements, then the profits are going to come first. And we see that within the fraud and the misreporting that exists within the corporations or corporate reports, where corporations have actually participated in this reporting system as where it is today. And what I'm referring to is there are a number of NGOs and organizations out there that have created reports and standards for corporations to actually report their what they're doing and how they're in regards to the environment or labor, like let's say, such as the GRE, the Global Reporting Initiative, for instance. And what they're finding is that corporations will present themselves and say, like, yeah, we're being socially responsible within our labor practices or our environmental practices, for instance, and we're actually taking it upon ourselves to self-regulate ourselves and report on these things. But when we examine the reports, we're finding that the vast majority of corporations are actually just pretty much making the stuff up in order to create the image and the picture that they're actually doing something in these areas, but they're not. And that actually matches what we see in our world today. I mean, if corporations were really taking this seriously and really moving within the point of social and environmental responsibility, I would imagine that I would see far less of the abuses that I can see today. Practically just by turning on my TV set, I can see a myriad of abuses within the 20 minutes of just watching regular news. So it doesn't seem to be effective, and it seems like corporations are doing what's best for them, which is a natural tendency within the system as it's structured now, and that is just to make the presentation that they're actually being socially and environmentally responsible, but really in actuality they're not.
So there goes the actual nitty-gritty question, because we know that yes, corporations regulate themselves and are these entities that actually surpass national regulations, and this is an ongoing situation with the TTIP or TTIP and all the protests that are ongoing, and this kind of like corporate takeover that is very well known by people that are continually being investigating this problem. But in essence, the problem with corporations is that they're currently functioning within the constraint or within the platform of a capitalistic system that has no sense of ethics or regulation in terms of considering the environment and people. So how can we then effectively apply corporate social responsibility? What changes are required for that?
Well, just to clarify, I think that even the corporations, even the individuals that work in the corporations that are producing these false reports and still maintaining their not non-supportive business practices for, that are not best for all, or at least best for most, they're still within them. They do want to do things that are socially and environmentally responsible, but within the system as it is now, they simply can't afford to do it. That's how the system's structured. I mean, profit and survival are the bottom line, and it kind of factors into Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I mean, the first thing that we need to do is take care of ourselves in this system, and that means that whatever we do, we have to make sure that we have our survival taken care of, and that goes for a corporation. So if a corporation is faced with making the decision between doing something that's environmentally or socially responsible and actually making profit, and that may actually threaten their survival, then they're going to go ahead and ensure their survival first and just make the presentation as like we've already discussed. That's a natural, inherent factor within the situation within the economy as it stands today. So by just simply trying to police it more or enforce laws more that will try to put pressures on corporations to actually do the right thing, so to speak, I don't believe that's actually going to have any effect. Because what you're going to wind up with is with the exact thing that you see in all other aspects where you try to police something more. You just wind up with more loopholes, more back doors, more deals behind the scenes where people work things out and still continue to appear to make it like they're actually making the changes or doing what they need to be doing to comply with the law. And the system's just going to keep on going as it is, because the overall system is a profit generated system. So if we're going to stay within a profit first system, we have to change some things within the system that will actually motivate individuals to take it upon themselves to comply with social and environmental responsibilities. And I do have some ideas on those as well, what that would be.
Well, yeah, absolutely. What you're mentioning is precisely the systemic problem that we have to address instead of only wanting to address corporations. So if we lose our attention or our focus only on what corporations are doing, but are not looking at what kind of structures are existent in our current economy that are pushing corporations to obviously only focus on profit-making schemes that do not consider the environment or the effect that it has on a community and the global market, in essence, obviously the problem will continue to exist. And yes, I do agree that it would only lead people or corporations, in essence, to continue finding backdoors. And this is also the carbon tax schemes. I definitely do not see them as an effective regulation measure. It will only lead ways in which people can find, backdoors, as you were mentioning, and evasion, tax evasion, and so forth. And really the problem is precisely something that we actually have a suggestion for, an actual solution for. So what can you tell? The living income guaranteed proposal, in essence, creates, or from your perspective, of course, a supportive platform to make of CSR something sustainable and applicable and feasible in this current system.
Yeah, okay, so just to back up 1 minute there, as far as what I'd like to get clear, though, is that it's not like the corporations are the bad guys, or we have to project any form of blame on corporations or people with money or people who are trying to make profits. It's just that the system has to be structured in a way where we still have the same incentives in place, the same human drives in place. It's just that the results are different. We're like, in order to win, now you actually have to really be socially responsible and environmentally responsible. or maybe even give up some immediate profits to go long for long-term gains, because you can see that, you know, within the system as it operates, that there's definitely a true advantage and an actual need, like a necessary change to be socially responsible and environmentally responsible must take place. And if that's not in institute, or if that dynamic is not in the economic structure, then we will never have any change whatsoever, because it's like for the reasons I've just discussed. I mean, without having to go ahead and repeat that. And so one of those institutions, or and like there's a computer term, GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. So what I'm really getting at here is that we're getting the system, the results that are as a result of the programming of the system as it is. This is the result. There's no way to change it without changing the structure, the program, so to speak. So part of that change would indeed be a living income guarantee, where we can, through a living income guarantee, provide a base level of income for the masses, thus giving them more access to money, and within that point, profit for the corporations will be looked at a little bit differently, and the money that the people will have will be like a voting power given to the people. So I'll just bounce that off of you for a second, and then maybe we can expand on that.
Yeah, because what is currently going on is that our political participation is essentially nil. There's none of it, or there's a very scarce also attention and even desire to be interested in political matters and decision-making processes that affect us all. So what we also suggest with the living income proposal is that it's not only giving money to people, as you were mentioning, but also considering that with getting the money, we can also then become participants in how the economy functions. Like we can start actually developing this democratic platform that is lacking at the moment, based on direct democracy, which is something that we also propose, wherein, as you mentioned, yes, the money that you use can actually become your voting power in terms of actually supporting corporations that are, for example, proving themselves to be corporate social responsible and doing business with ethics, and that it is palpable and visible, maybe being, sharing an information or some kind of reports, but not for the sake of winning, better promotion for their brand, but that we as consumers can actually prove that. And along with that, then comes our decision and our ability to make proper decisions in terms of how can a corporation then still make money, yet in an ethical manner. And that will through several mechanisms that we will be discussing in a moment. But we have a question, Josh, so I'll read it to you.
Sure.
Josh, this is from Joanna Jesus. What are your thoughts on ethical and responsible investors and shareholders? Is this a trend that is being promoted among the investors community that can eventually influence corporations?
Well, yes, it can ultimately, if the economic structure is in place to facilitate such that expanding in that way. But as it stands now, let's say you're an investor and you have this money and you want to invest in corporations that are proving themselves within the structure as it is, to be socially and environmentally responsible. Well, what are you going to go by? Are you going to go by the reports that they're giving to the NGOs, such as the Global Reporting Institute, which just has recently published a study showing that almost 80% of the companies are making the stuff up? I mean, you don't even have any standard. How do you even know that you're investing in the right company? So that's the first point within that. And the second point within that would be that the investors still are at the top of the pyramid within the structure. The investors need to be the people. The people need to be the investors. And so ultimately, if you're at the top of the pyramid and you have all the money, you're still in the end, you're still looking for profits. and you're still going to be tainted with those decisions about who can provide the biggest profit that appears to be socially and corporately environmentally responsible. So I think that those investors can have an influence, but they're really not the key to the whole situation, as far as I can see it.
And there we also get onto a part of the discussion on the solutions that we propose, because certainly these shareholders have also a say in, they make the decision of how a brand is valued in essence, in any corporation. So at the moment, we are, as consumers and as the people, as you're mentioning, we are the ones that are allowing those few individuals to decide how it will function. But as you mentioned, if we the people become part of these corporations, that we will be directly able to influence how these corporations operate. Not all corporations, but we can start somewhere. So what can you tell us about this aspect of shareholders and stakeholders?
Okay, so I wanted to expand on the last point, though, the LIG, just a little bit, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure, go for it.
Okay, and then we'll go into shareholders and stakeholders. I like that topic, but as far as the LIG is concerned, what you have right now is a pyramid system. It's where the money is at the top of the pyramid, and the investments that are directed, even within the green investment groups, because a lot of them wind up being shareholders, so to speak, or influencing the shareholders, and the shareholders as they are now are at the top, and their decisions, that what they want in the end is profit. That's why they're investing, to increase their profits, to increase their market share. You see, so if you can change the shape of that system to more of a rectangular shape, so to speak, where the money is more equally distributed to the bottom, and you don't have a heavy concentration of capital at the top, then you're going to enable people to, like you said, vote with their money as far as what they buy. And within that topic, that goes, I like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, so to speak, concept, because people won't just be buying for survival needs. They will really be able to look at things to see, if the companies are really proving themselves, and then, and really buy on the next level of the human psyche, which is for personal self-interest and how people have defined themselves as being environmentally conscious and so on and so forth. And the other thing that they will be able to do is support political movements if they have a little bit more money. And just like at the top of the pyramid, they support political movements with their money to keep the system as it is. If the money is distributed downwards more, then you'll have another political movement base, so that you can have political movements pushed from the bottom up, which would be effective in the long run on that front. So I just wanted to add that. I guess we probably already said that in so many words already, but
that's awesome. No, that's an awesome reminder, because yes, lobbying, as we had also discussed prior to this hangout, is one of the key problems that we've witnessed in relation to corporations and government regulating the economy according to what corporations decide. So we have to actually come to breach this problem through what you're mentioning, and that comes with our own decision to become active participants. Right now, for example, we would go into the topic of politics and representative democracy, which is not really effective. We actually then endorse, within the context of the living income guaranteed proposal, that we actually become direct participators in the democracy system, and that is direct democracy, which you can obviously look at another hangout that we have on this topic. So to not deviate, anything else on that?
No, that's it. I think, okay. I just wanted to make that point. I think it would be very effective to have a living income guarantee, because you would have a new power, so to speak. Because power is money. Money is power. That's how the system works. So the people have the money, then they also have the power. And right now, you're not making any progress because people don't have any power, and they're just in survival mode. They're begging for money, fending for money. So whether a corporation, all they're looking for is the cheapest product because that's all they can afford. That's the reality of the vast majority of those with money on this planet, and that's just within the people that have money. There's even people with no money on this planet. So within the people that have money, most of them are just scraping by to survive, and there's no way that they can be effective in directing this system of corporate responsibility within that starting point. So that needs to be addressed. They need to be lifted up above survival mode, and then you will have a brand new base of people that are educated themselves to better themselves, to get more involved politically. I believe that would be a direct ramification of an LIG, and then things will start to change because people will be able to stand and really make true demands of their corporations that are supplying their products for them.
And direct decision making as well, because right now, as you mentioned, when you're in survival mode, you really don't even have time to investigate what we're also sharing here for the sake of self-education, which is a primary aspect that we've forgotten. Wherein, as you come home, just tired from work, all you want to do is just tune out and plug out and just entertain ourselves, which is one of the problems and outflows of this current economic system. So we actually have to redefine the way that we participate in the economy. And as we can, for example, have less hours of work, or maybe you simply want to take a year off, you get a living income and actually educate yourself, and who knows, maybe you can become a political actor in your community, or get involved into volunteering processes. All of these aspects that currently cannot be done because there's no guarantee to these living sustainability. So we have another question. This is not so clear, but it's from Johan Veselink. He's saying, will people always choose the lowest price?
Well,
do you understand what he refers to?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, even if people have money, that doesn't mean they're always going to be socially and environmentally conscious about what they buy. They still may want to choose the least expensive option, and not even care about where it came from. Obviously, that's a point to consider too. That would be addressed with actually pushing the current awareness even further than it is now. This awareness of being socially and economically responsible needs to be something that like everybody knows, like it's just like second nature, and that'll be achieved through social media and regular media means, and and maybe even aligning with the current green movement, if you want to call it that, and expanding on it to where it's just simply something that everybody is completely aware of, to hopefully increase the potential for people to choose and only buy from corporations that are doing the right thing. So just simply lifting the income up will not just guarantee that all of a sudden everybody's going to start boycotting corporations that are like cheating, so to speak. But
exactly.
But nonetheless, it'll increase the likelihood that people will be able to start moving in that direction. Because right now, as we speak, if you're in survival mode, I mean, I experience this all the time. I'll try to talk to people about the issues at hand, and both existential and within points like this, and the average response I get is, "Are you kidding me? I'm just trying to survive. Like, I have time to even sort through all that." And I get this from everybody, even people who are making pretty good money, actually. But it's just we have to be lifted out of the point of stress too. It's so stressful to be in survival mode that, like as you mentioned, Marlen, when you come home, all you want to do is release that stress. And the last thing you want to do is direct it into something constructive, because that's actually stressful when you're already stressed out.
Exactly. And he's saying making people aware, thank you, which is definitely what I was going to add to that. Education, we actually have a hangout, and we will leave a link to that, on consumer education, because we precisely talked about all of these aspects of, okay, you get the money, what now? We have to also make informed decisions in terms of what we purchase. So Johan, thanks for your question and comment. I will leave a link to that so that you can check it out and then maybe comment further there. So Josh, let's get on to your favorite topic, stakeholders and shareholders. Explain us that as part of the living income proposal.
Okay, well, I just thought that was an interesting point that I was reading when I was reading about this topic of the NGOs and within the concept of corporate social responsibility, that what they define as the people that are affected by corporate policies and corporate practices to bring products to market, both the environment and the people that are directly affected for the good or the bad, those are considered to be stakeholders. Okay, because I guess you can look at that as they have something at stake based on what the corporations are practicing to bring products to market. And then within that, the current movement considers, they're directing themselves to consider the stakeholders and their decisions that they make. But I don't really see that happening. What I see them as really considering the shareholders. The shareholders are the ones that actually own the company. They sit on the boards, they make decisions, or they just simply own shares of a company, and they want to see their profits, they want to see their shares increase in value. And the executives of a corporation are ultimately responsible. Their main responsibility above all else is to increase shareholder value. That's what they're there for. They're there to increase stock value. And so the stakeholders, although they get a really colorful name and it sounds great that they're even called stakeholders, and their corporations are considering them within the point of they're kind of at stake. That's why they're the stakeholders. They're not really answering to them. They're answering to the shareholders. The shareholders first, the stakeholders second. So what needs to happen in some manifestation, in some way or other, is the shareholders, the stakeholders, somehow or another, need to become shareholders in some way. And that way the corporations will then answer to the shareholders, who are also the stakeholders. And I guess that's another good point, because a lot of the shareholders as they stand today are not really stakeholders. They might be a shareholder of Nestle, who's producing products in an abusive way in another country where the stakeholders are over there. They're not stakeholders, they're shareholders. They're not and the corporations are answering to the shareholders. So that dynamic has to change. Yeah, I think, yeah.
So within the context of the living income, we have also proposed that, for example, certain corporations that deal with, for example, natural resources, things that should be actually a common property, so to speak, that we can all benefit from, for example, the use of water, which is currently now being hoarded, as you were mentioning. One corporation, as an example, Nestle, that is using water and just essentially grabbing it and using it for personal profit as a corporation. So we are talking about corporations that could be precisely taken on within this context of the individuals of or citizens of a particular society, community, or even the nation becoming direct benefactors of the profit of these corporations. And this is something that would also place us not only as benefactors from these corporations, but would also enable us to make these decision-making processes more effective and directive. And that's something that is currently lacking and non-existent in our economic system, and should be, because right now our politics that should be actually regulating these terms of how a corporation operates is not there. So it's not so much that the corporation is a problem, but our lack of active participation is the actual problem that is ongoing. So what's your perspective on this?
Well, I mean, just an interesting thing occurred to me in the Constitution of the United States. It doesn't say anything about the individual's right to resources, and to me, that seems to be the most crucial right that any being can have, is a right to natural resources, especially resources such as water, which is you can't even go a few days without water, so within the Constitution, you have a right to pursue happiness, which probably implies that you have the right to own water if that brings you profit and makes you happy. So, if you look at it that way, but you don't actually have a right to the resources. And I think that the resources need to be an individual right to the people in certain geographical areas, like a nation within its borders. All those beings have rights to the resources within those borders, within a form of shareholder status, where they actually have ownership rights at some level. Now, as far as if one nation has resources that are owned by the people and they don't have a certain resource, then they can trade what resources they have with another country that has resources. And within that dynamic, you will have the resources required by people always available, and they will always have the ability to purchase resources because they'll have something to trade for those resources. So there's one benefit from that right there. Another point would be that corporations wouldn't be able to do as they will with resources. So the corporations can still pursue their profit-driven motives and still make products out of resources. But the corporations don't own the resources. The people own the resources. So we at least start within the point of making the resources everyone's right and everyone's share. Everybody equally has a shared stake, shareholder status within resources, equally divided amongst the people within each region. That would create a dynamic where corporations couldn't step in and abuse the resources because the people own the resources. And again, that would lift people because they're owners, right? Right now, people don't care about that because they don't own them anyway. They don't feel they have any control. So that would, I think, be a huge benefit, is to at least figure out a way to create ownership, public ownership of all essential, at least the essential resources.
Yes, this is something that is practically embedded also within the context of the living income guaranteed proposal, which, as we mentioned, it's not only handing out money and that's it as a basic income, but it involves these other changes at an economic, political level, and this constitutional level, wherein this access to our resources in order to live should be actually guaranteed, and the way to guarantee them is through providing money to provide this access to these resources. And so there is also, just to finish off because we're running out of time, Josh, in relation to the green movement, so to speak, environmentalists, what would you propose to them, people that are watching and that are regularly maybe seeing corporations as a problem? What's your proposal to them?
Proposal in as an extension of what we've kind of mentioned within the LIG and so on and so forth, or I'm a little bit unclear on that question.
Yeah, in essence, what we're witnessing is that we tend to see these various movements on various compartmentalized problems, like anti-war, save the animals, and so forth, which are all very valuable efforts at a social level and organizations, but we're required to look at kind of like the nitty-gritty detail of the problem, which is the systemic problem that we've discussed throughout this hangout. So to all people that are kind of directing their efforts to maybe environmentalism only or green movements, what's your perspective on maybe why living income is the solution, if you want to call it that?
Okay, yeah, great. Well, I say we all unify because we all really have the same exact root problem. It's like one root problem, and it's a systemic problem that we've already talked about, and it's manifesting in various illnesses, diseases, if you so to speak. I mean, if you look at the root, it's the same. We just have different symptoms, and so we have all types of abuse, and we have people that rally up against each point individually, and we're not realizing that we're still divided within that movement because we're not realizing that there's actually a root cause to it all, and that is the current structure of the system. It goes back to the GIGO concept. It's garbage it's garbage in. The system is programmed to produce what it is producing now, which is the garbage outside. Garbage in, garbage out. So we need to restructure the system within a living income guarantee, maybe do some public ownership of essential resources, and we need to unify in order to to move that movement forward. And we also need to take our collective knowledge of what we know of each in every individual field, where there's labor abuses or animal abuses or what have you, and then bring those to the forum in a unified way to increase public awareness of it. And so that would be my response to that.
Yeah, absolutely, and we definitely agree, and we are more than welcoming anyone that would like to participate in these discussions, and invite them to also read the Living Income Guaranteed proposal. As we've mentioned, people like Occupy Wall Street are now proposing basic income as a solution. Naomi Klein, with This Changes Everything, her new book, considering sustainability problems, is also calling out for a basic income. There's many people joining now into the chorus of the basic income. So here we simply invite everyone to consider that there are more changes required to the provision of this money, more systemic structural alignments that are required for that to make it more effective and a genuine improvement in our society. So we do say it is possible to have corporations work in an ethical and moral manner, so to speak, and that implies not only by the decisions that they can make, but how we act and cooperate with them as well. So it's not to continue fighting the corporations, because we also, use their products and actually benefit from work together. So Mats Bjornsti, I probably pronounced it incorrectly, from Norway, he's saying agreed, cool guy. So thanks for watching, Mats. And so to wrap up this hangout, would you like to say any last words on this topic?
I just wanted to expand on that last point about corporations. They're definitely not the enemy. Corporations are marvelous tools of organizing human power to produce resources systematically, or produce products and services systematically. So we definitely there's definitely a huge value in corporations. It's just that we need to find a way to rein them in, so to speak, so they really start working for the people, for everybody, instead of just those at the top that are kind of behind the scenes.
Yes, and that requires our direct participation on that, and not allowing ourselves to be only, wanting to fulfill our pursuit of happiness, as you were mentioning, and wanting to be entertained. It is about time that we realize if we don't make the changes, it's not even about corporations or people fighting against people, but it's now the earth calling our attention now. So we cannot really continue just passing these problems by and considering that there will be solutions somehow. We have to actually and directly work on this. Thanks for that comment, Mats. So this is it for our hangout. Thanks a lot, Josh. Too bad that we couldn't see you, but it was a great hangout. Thank you for that.
All right, thank you, Marlen. Yeah, I had fun.
Well, and to everyone watching, remember that we will continue talking about sustainability for the rest of this month. So if you are watching the repetition of this hangout and you have questions for Josh, please place them on the comment section of the YouTube video. Remember to subscribe as well to this channel, and we will see you next Sunday. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye, Josh.
Bye.